Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to day 3 of Spring Clean 2024. So glad to have you with us again today. And today we're going to learn more about litter and waste in your school and the kinds of things that we can do about them. But first, as always, let's see how much we already know about litter and waste. Since we're going to be talking today about waste in school canteens and lunchrooms, do you know how many single-use cups are used in Scotland every year? If you think it's around 400,000 cups, put 2 hands up. And if you think it's around 1 million cups, put 1 hand up. And if you think it's a huge number of 4 million cups, put your hand on your head. Let's see what you think in the chat. Remember, this is just in Scotland. Every single year, how many single-use cups? This could be for cold drinks or for things like coffee. Have a think about it. Let me know in the chat how many you think are used every single year. What do we think? Having a very good think about this, I will let you know that it is the very huge number of 4 million cups every single year. Perhaps there's something different we could do instead of putting them in the bin. Let's find out today. You remember yesterday's bin bag audit? If you weren't at our lesson yesterday, that's okay. The recording's on our website. But if you were at our lesson and you were with us looking through the bin bag of litter that we picked up by the burn, let's have a look again and see what else we can notice. Here's our pile of litter. And if you remember, it was very smelly and it was very dirty, but there's something else about this litter. Can you tell me anything about the colors that we can see here? Quite a lot of different materials there. If you remember, there's a lot of plastic in there and a lot of single-use items. But what about the colors? Got Echt School saying there's very bright colors. That's right. It is very colorful and the colors are very bright. Why do you think snacks and drinks and even vapes producers would like to have colorful packaging? What do you think that does? I mean, it does make the litter easy to find when it's dropped on the ground, but that's not the reason we're looking for. What reason do you think the packaging would be very bright? Mrs. Campbell's class says the colors are bright to get people to buy them, and Echt School agrees. Yes, to catch people's attention and to make sales. That's right, to stand out. You remember how yesterday we said around half of the UK's litter can be traced to only 10 companies. And this means that very few large companies are responsible for the packaging and the products that are attractive to buy and that we consume fast and frequently. Do you remember that we were talking about this pile of litter saying most of it is single use? So most of it wasn't held by someone for very long. They didn't use it for very long. And then it ended up on the ground and it should have ended up in the bin. So these products are things that we buy to consume quickly and frequently, but they're not giving us the solution for packaging waste they produce. So what do you think we could do about this? Maybe this is something you can investigate a little bit further during your next litter pick. And now I am very pleased to welcome my colleague, Jo Oxley-Glenister, who's here to talk to us about all kinds of waste that's produced for school lunches, in our canteens, in our school environments, and the kinds of things that maybe we could do about them. Welcome, Jo.
Good morning, Kat. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. So, yes, as Kat says, what we're going to do today is have a look at all of the different sources of litter and waste in school. So during our live lessons so far, we've looked at lots of different sources of litter and waste in the streets or the communities, and now we're going to think about the school canteen. So if you give me a second just to sort out my slides, apologies, there we go. Oh, I've skipped back to the start. So today we're going to focus on the types of waste that's produced in the school canteen or cafeteria, and that's either the packaging waste or the food waste. And most importantly, we're going to be thinking about what we might do to be able to reduce it. So we're going to start off with an activity, and this is going to be a poll. And what I'd like you to do is to have a look at these options and have a think about which of these food and drink containers that you use in your school. So you might want to have a quick chat about this in your class, and then you can put your answers in the chat. And the options, as I say, are on the slide already. So if you can't see it, because it's going to either pop up either in the chat or on the screen. So there we go. So the poll is just up now. So I'd like you to have a look at those options and have a discussion and have a think about which of those ones you use in your school. So we're thinking about meal times, such as lunches or even snack time. Which of those items do you use? So we've got a few responses coming in already. Lots of answers already. Thank you, everyone. So far we've got quite a lot using reusable plastic trays or plates. Metal cutlery is also high. Reusable cups is also high. A few options for our disposable or single-use items, and that's what we're going to be talking about mostly this morning. And a few popping the answers in the chat as well, which is absolutely fine. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. So actually the poll will stay up so you can continue to add your answers, but we'll have a chat about some of those. So as I say, this morning, we're going to be thinking mostly about our waste products, okay? So it's great that a lot of people are already using reusable, because we're going to be thinking about what are the disadvantages or advantages of some of the single-use or disposable ones, okay? And we'll come back to reusable items later on as well. So the first thing we're going to be thinking about is packaging waste. And from that activity, we can see that there's a range of different items that you use in your school. So we're going to start thinking about the problems and the possible solutions to tackle those. So in yesterday's live lesson, Kat mentioned that disposable drinks containers are one of the most commonly littered items in Scotland for street litter and things that we find in our communities. So it's really important that we try and limit the amount of this type of waste in the schools as well. So from the poll, we saw that some of you do use paper containers or single-use items like plates or cups. So we're going to have a think about the pros and cons of this type of container. So the next few slides are going to be thinking about the pros, or the good things, and the cons, the bad things, for some of the disposable or single-use items. And I'd like you to put your answers in the chat for this as well. So first of all, for paper containers, can you have a think of any of the pros, any of the good things about paper containers, such as plates or cups, the ones that are shown on the slide just there? Now, this is quite a hard task because you might have a very strong opinion about about these items. So have a think about both sides. It's a really good idea to think about both sides of the options for this. So I'll give you a second to pop some answers for any good things, any pros that you can think about, and then we can go through a couple of the ideas. Some answers coming in already, which is great. So a few people saying that they're reusable, sorry, they're recyclable, which is great. You can, so yeah, you can recycle them. They don't break or smash, which is obviously, you know, a risk if we're using them in school. That's a good idea. A few people thinking about the cons already. That's absolutely fine. We're going to come on to those in a second. Miss Campbell's class saying that they're cheap and easy to buy. Fantastic. So yeah, so a lot of you got some really good ideas and answers already. So they're lightweight and they're easy to use. They're most commonly single-use cup. That means that they're easily accessible or easy to buy, as we've had in the comments already. And they're also cheap to buy and to brand. So for companies that want to put their logo on things, it's really easy to do that. So let's have a think about some of the cons. And I know that you've put your answers in already for some of these. So what do you think some of the cons or the bad things are about them? Some fast answers already saying that they're only single use, can only be used once. Really good. And they're bad for the environment. Excellent answers, really well done. So yeah, so they're not widely recycled. So it's almost the opposite of some of the things that we were saying. So, and we did say that they can't be recycled earlier on. So they're not widely recycled. If they go in the bin, they end up in landfill or they're incinerated, they're burnt. And they're not just paper because they're actually lined with plastic. And this is something that's really important that I'd like to share with you just now. So I've got an example here to show what the problem is. So you can see from this image on the slide that single-use cups are paper, but then they're also lined with plastic. Somebody said in the comments that they can go soggy. So this lining of plastic stops it going soggy. You wouldn't want your water or your juice coming straight out the bottom of the cup, and that's why they have to be lined with plastic. But that makes it very hard for them to be recycled. So as I say, I've actually got an example here. I'm hoping you'll be able to see this quite clearly. So I've got here a standard single-use cup, and what I did is, or actually my colleague Emma did, she soaked it overnight in boiling water, and this is what happens to it. So hopefully you can see that if you get a standard cup, this is a coffee cup, a standard coffee cup, and then you soak it in the boiling water, can you see all of these different layers? So it's not just one layer as it looks just here, just one layer of paper or cardboard. It's actually loads and loads of different layers. So you can see that there's the outside bit of cardboard just here. There's a lining of slightly thinner paper, and then there's this plastic lining that we're talking about just here. I'll show you another example where it's come right away. So here's one, you can see all the way through it because the bottom's come off. So you can really see clearly that lining of plastic just there. This is maybe an activity that you could do after the lesson as well. So as I say, that's if you soak the cup in boiling water or in cold water, but for a bit longer, a couple of days if you're using cold water, you'll see that the linings and the different layers in that cup start to come away. So that's a really good activity that you could do after the lesson to have a really closer investigation of that problem of single-use cups. Now, throughout the lesson, we're going to have a think about some possible solutions. So here is one of the possible solutions, or a sustainable solution for that issue of single-use cups, because there are a few companies collecting and recycling single-use paper cups. Coffee cups like Cafe Nero and Costa often do it. And there's also companies that send out special collection boxes, just like this one here. So maybe that's something that you could have a think about using in school if you still use your cups. So the next thing we're going to think about is compostable containers. So you might have seen these ones. Here is an example. So you might use these. So again, same activity, have a think, what are the pros for a compostable container? Now these are different to our single-use ones, our standard cup, I should say, standard paper cup. So pop your answers in the chat for any good things about compostable containers, such as cups or boxes. Yeah, so first answer, lots of answers coming in that they can go in the compost. Fantastic. Yeah. So a few people thinking about the pros and the cons in the same idea, saying that they're convenient and they're better to be disposed of, but they are still single use. Exactly. Great ideas. So they're made from organic material, such as cornstarch or sugarcane fiber, which means they're not made of plastic. And they can also, as you've said, they can be made into high quality compost that's used for growing. So let's have a think about some of the cons. So what do you think one of the cons might be for compostable containers? Some other good ideas that they're cheaper to buy. They're still cheap to buy. Oh, some interesting ideas about saying that they're not good for the environment when they're making them, which is actually the first point, one of the points that I've got as well. So yeah, they sometimes need fertilizer to grow the crops in the first place. And also, they also need to be, or usually need to be, industrially composted. That means that they can't always go into the compost bin at home or at school or a compost heap, because some of them need to be industrially composted. And there's also a bit of a confusing term between compostable and biodegradable. So I've used an example on the slide here that says it's 100% compostable and biodegradable. And there's a bit of a confusion between what those terms actually mean, because things that are biodegradable aren't necessarily compostable, okay? And when things that are biodegradable, they break up into smaller pieces of plastic, usually still, whereas the compostable items can break down into organic things like soil and water and carbon dioxide, but then they help the composting process. So some good ideas coming in. These are just a few of the pros and cons, everyone, as well. You're thinking of some a long list of them. So I've just selected a few of the key ones, but you are thinking of lots of different ones. Well done. So what are the possible sustainable solutions for compostable products? Well, the first thing is that unlike things that are biodegradable, compostable things actually have to say that they are compostable. And this is like a legal requirement. So you can see that on my cup here, it's very small, so I'm not sure if you will. Oh, you just about see it. Sorry, there we go. So on my compostable cup example here, you can see that it's got this logo, which means that it actually is compostable. So make sure that if you want to buy something that that's compostable, it has that logo. And again, there are some companies that are collecting and composting containers. So for example, Vegware is based in Edinburgh, and they operate across much of Scotland. And what they do is they send you the compostable packaging, such as cups or containers, and then they come and collect them. and then that's made into compost. Now, of course, you do have to buy them, so there's a cost involved there, but that process is what they called a closed process, where it's a circular. So remember, we've talked about circular economy before. That's an example of that. So now we're going to move on to cutlery. So we've just talked about packaging and containers, and now we're going to go on to cutlery. So the same thing. And just because I'm aware of the time, everyone, why don't you just put pros and cons in this at the same time? So have a think about some pros and cons of plastic cutlery. So you can put some pros and cons in the same message, or I can have a look at the chat and see what we're saying. And as Kat says, you're doing really well to think about all of these different options and all these questions. As I say, it's a bit of a whistle stop discussion about these options today, so it's definitely something that you can continue. So lots of answers coming in already, saying a pro is that they're cheap, a con that they break easily, no cleaning, so you can just go straight into the waste. They take a long time to decompose. Again, some fantastic answers, everyone. Well done. So, just as you've said, pros, they're lightweight, they're cheap, and they're widely available. Very similar to our single-use paper cups and containers we talked about a few moments ago. The cons is, yes, you're absolutely right. They are not very good for the environment at all. They release huge amounts of CO2 when they're produced, and also when they break down. And when they break down into microplastics. So just because it's broken down or it's broken up into smaller pieces does not mean that it's gone away. It's still going to stay in the environment in microplastics. And on that, they can take up to 200 years to degrade or to break down. Fantastic, great answers. Again, lots of answers that I haven't got on the slide. So well done for thinking about lots of different options. So now we're going to move on to wooden cutlery. So what do you think for wooden cutlery? And you'll notice that all of these options that we're thinking about are still what we think as disposable. So these are still things that we class as disposable or single use generally. So a few ideas coming in for wooden cutlery already. Well done. So they're a bit more durable, a bit more solid than plastic cutlery, and they can be recyclable. They're made of natural materials. Great ideas. Made from wood. Yep. Some people saying that they don't like wooden cutlery. I don't like the taste of wooden cutlery at all, so that's a really good one. It's not necessarily about what they're made of, it's more about what we think about them, so good thinking there. So yeah, I've got ones that are very similar. So made of natural material, wood, not plastic. They can be composted, so you can actually put these into the compost heap or the compost bin. It's sometimes good to check with your school or local authority to make sure it can go in one that the council collect. And bamboo is becoming more popular rather than sort of like using pine or other trees. Bamboo, which is seen as a more sustainable solution because it grows a lot faster. And the cons, you've got lots of these, really well done. So it requires cutting down the trees or any of the plants to produce them, which we know releases CO2. The hygiene risk means it's still single use. So because it's made of wood and it's porous, it's fibrous, it can trap germs. So sometimes people don't like using it more than once, so it's still seen as single use. And again, sometimes, just like our paper cups, sometimes they have a plastic coating, which doesn't make it a sustainable solution at all, because we're still having that issue with having plastic a very thin layer of plastic coated on what is supposed to be something that's sustainable. So as I said, some of the sustainable solutions are that it's compostable. So wooden cutlery can go in the compost, as I say, as long as you check with your area. Anything that is reusable is better. So we haven't talked about reusable options because we're just thinking about the waste items. So hopefully things that are reusable, such as our plastic trays that you said you were using, and ceramic plates, don't get wasted that often. So those are always going to be a better option. And you could also think about trying a combination of metal and wooden cutlery. So if, for example, you're still using some plastic or metal, some plastic or wooden cutlery, you could try thinking about how to mix in some metal reusable cutlery as well. So we've just had a think about all of the packaging waste. We're now going to have a think about food waste, which is the other type of waste we would get in school at meal times or at snack times. So you might have joined some of the other live lessons on food and the environment. So you'll know that this is a big topic on its own. So again, we're just going to do just think of some of the key themes with this, with the time we've got left of the lesson. So we're going to start off again with another activity, and this is another poll. So this time it's to think about whether you separate your food waste at school. So this is a yes, no, sometimes, or don't know, and all of those are absolutely fine. So have a think about whether you separate your food waste. It might not just be you, but it might also be the school staff that work in the canteen or cafeteria. Some good answers coming in already. Quite a few people saying yes, but actually it's a bit more equal than the last poll. So quite a few people also saying no or sometimes. Fabulous. Right, really good answers. So the reason we're talking about that is to think about the impact of food waste on the environment. Okay, when we dispose of food waste, it has a big impact on the environment because when food waste goes into landfill, it releases methane. And you may well have joined some of our live lessons where we've discussed this already. So you might also recognize this picture because when the methane is released, when food waste rots, it releases the methane, and that's a very harmful greenhouse gas because it traps more heat than some of the other greenhouse gases. So we talk about carbon dioxide being really common greenhouse gas. Methane is not released as much, but it can have more warming potential. It makes it more warm and it speeds up that process much faster. So any food waste that can't be eaten, such as eggshells and banana skins, should be put into a compost because methane in a compost bin is trapped inside and not released into the atmosphere. And it actually speeds up the process and makes better compost as well. It takes a huge amount of energy to produce the food for us to eat. So from growing it on the farm to manufacturing it and transporting it, often between different continents using planes or ships. And then it finally gets to the supermarkets where it might need to go into a refrigerator before it gets to house or school. So that means that if we waste the food, we waste all the energy that went into producing it at each stage of the supply chain. So this image shows the food supply chain, and it shows that how much energy is used at each different stage. So we've got one more activity to think about and to think about our food waste. And I'd like you to think how much food that we waste could have been eaten. So have a think about how much of the food that is wasted actually could have been eaten. So if you had a plate from lunch and you only ate a section of it and you wasted the rest, how much do you think that section is? How much that could have been eaten that we waste? So one hand up for 25%, put your hand on your head for 50%, and two hands up if you think it's 75%. And then you can put your answers into the chat. Mrs. Campbell's class in there, 75% as an idea, 50%. 75. Lots of answers coming in now. Well done, everyone. So everyone's going for the upper end of either 50 or 75, but we're generally a bit split between them. So really well done. It is, in fact, 75% of the food that we waste could have been eaten. So that is the same as 4 out of 6 bananas or this much pizza. So could you imagine just having 2 slices of the pizza and then throwing away the rest of it, or taking 2 of these bananas and then throwing away the rest of it? That's how much it is. And when we think of it like that, it's pretty amazing. So 75% sounds like a big number as it is, but then if you think about that in compared to actual food products, that's what it's like. I wouldn't want to waste that much pizza, I've got to be honest. So as we can see, food waste is unfair because it damages the planet if it's not disposed of properly, if it goes into landfill. And it's also unfair to all the people that worked hard to grow and harvest our food. They might not get paid very well, and they don't get paid anywhere near as much as it costs for us to buy the food. So as well as being unfair on the planet, it's unfair to a lot of people, and that's why we need to think about reducing our food waste. So let's have a think about what action we can take to do that. Well, the first one is absolutely to reduce food waste. So we've just learned that 75% of it, of our food waste could have actually been eaten. So thinking about how to reduce it in the first place. There are lots of ideas about making smaller portion sizes and just not wasting our food as much as we can. You could also, if you've got the opportunity at school, to create your own compost and grow your own food. We know that a lot of our eco schools do this, and that's fantastic, and that can be on any scale, and we'll have a look at that in a second. And we can also think about sharing leftover food. So anything that is any food that's not been used that is potentially going to be wasted, we could think about taking it home or giving it to the community so that other people can benefit from the food waste or leftover food. So let's have a quick look about what options you could do in your school and what other schools have done. So first of all, we could think about growing. So as I said, it can be growing on any scale, from a fabulous looking polytunnel like this to window boxes. Any sort of growing that you can do in your school will help. You could think about monitoring your food waste by weighing how much you have, and there's an activity we'll come back to in a second about that, or looking about where your food comes from as well and think about how to reduce how far it travels, and also raising awareness. So there's a picture here of a school that set up a community food bank, and there's also an example of a school which has made a video to try and grow some food. So lots of different ways to raise awareness. So whereabouts can you start with reducing food waste and reducing our packaging waste in school? Well, first of all, you can carry out a waste audit to identify the issue. So this is going right back to our polls, thinking about what you do in your school, and we've got an activity on how you can carry that a waste audit. You can raise awareness in your school and local community about the issue and ask for help to make positive changes. So some of these things you'll need the adults in your school community to help with. That might be the teachers, head teacher, it might be the people that work in the school canteen, or it might even be the local authority, but you can make them aware that this is an important issue that you would like to address and think about. And as we said right back at the start, single-use items are some of the worst for the environment. So limiting the amount of single-use items where we can is really important. And as I said, if you're still using single-use items, you don't have to do a big change. You need to think about where it will going to make the most impact and maybe start to introduce reusable items where you can. So in the resources for this lesson, you will find the activity sheet that is a lunch waste audit. And this is to think about all the things we've discussed in this lesson, thinking about both the packaging waste and also the food waste. And if you've done some of our audits before, you'll recognise this format, and it's all about thinking about your individual school and what actions you could take. I'm going to hand back to Kat now, but thank you so much for listening, and thank you for your amazing comments in the chat. As I said, this is a big topic, and you've done really, really well to think about all of those options.
Thanks, Joe. That was fantastic. I'm really impressed with the answers that schools are putting in the chat. There's a lot of really good thought going on there behind those answers. That was really impressive. I just wanted to remind everyone, if you had any questions today about the lesson that Joe's just given us, please feel free to email us at ecoschools@keepscotlandbeautiful.org, and we'll try to get an answer for you for our assembly on Friday, which I hope that you'll be able to join us for. Now, just a quick reminder of the other activities that we'd like you to have a try at this week. Remember that we have our Litter League going on, so it's a chance to claim cleanup glory by adopting a place. Go and pick some litter, count the number of bags that you've picked up, and share them with us so that you can help your local authority area win a very cool trophy and bragging rights for the rest of the year. And this is the perfect time to carry out the litter pick required for a Green Flag Award if you're participating in eco schools. So why not pick a place that you love? Maybe that's part of your school grounds or a local park. Or for me, it's the burn near my house in my village. And go and carry out a litter pick there and tell us all about what you find and how you're taking care of your place. We're also looking for our Litter Less campaign this year for some schools to tell us about their litter journey. Tell us about the place that you've adopted in a small video, less than 3 minutes. Tell us how you're working to keep your place beautiful. Should include your location and should be filmed in landscape format if you can, please. There's more details about this in the resource folder that has been sent to teachers. And as always, we're always looking forward to seeing your amazing work during this week. Even if you'd just like to say hello and tell us what you think about the lessons this week, you can find us on all social media platforms at KSB Scotland. And if you prefer to email us, you can always reach us at ecoschools@keepscotlandbeautiful.org. We're always happy to hear from you. Thanks again, Joe, for telling us all about all the different kinds of waste streams that happen in schools and giving us some really good ideas of the kinds of things that schools could be thinking about doing to reduce the amount of waste that they produce at lunchtime. I hope you're able to join us tomorrow and Friday for the rest of our lessons this week. But that's all we have time for today, so bye for now.